And now it's Deborah Cobelt Live and Little Italy Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today on my Little Italy podcast and Deborah Cobelt Live. I have a very special guest calling in from Florence, Italy today, Idanna Pucci. Idanna is a storyteller, documentary filmmaker, cultural preservationist, and she wrote one of the most fascinating books that I've read in a while, Emilio Pucci, The Astonishing Odyssey of a Fashion Icon. And Emilio, of course, is Idanna's uncle, or was Idanna's uncle. And this is quite a story. When I read it, I had no idea. And in fact, Idanna, if I'm not mistaken, you didn't even know about all this that happened in your family until much later. So thank you for joining us, and tell us a little bit about this book and why you wrote it.
Well, I grew up in a place here they are called palaces, you know. It's not Buckingham Palace, but in Italy, in Florence, there are these family residents from the Renaissance, actually earlier. So I grew up in this place, and it belonged to both my father and uncle, the two brothers, and I grew up with this, you know, seeing my uncle in a way as a sort of fleeting figure passing through, and he was a bachelor at the time, and he was at the peak of getting at the peak of his success as a fashion with these fantastic, joyful fashions that he created. And I say joyful because he started after the war. So this is a story, actually, that goes from darkness to light.
Yeah.
And 3/4 of a book is about the darkness.
Yeah.
Then the quarter of the book is this incredible this man who was self-made. He, after the war, you know, all these young people like him, these young men and also women, they looked at devastated Italy, and they said, what am I going to do in life? And even if they had degrees, there was just, where do I start? And in his life, what's fascinating to me is about there are some people that are really blessed by luck and by chance. And he was really an example of that. And it reminds me of a gentleman I knew quite well who was much, much older. He could have been a great-grandfather. Anyway, he had been the president of Columbia Pictures, and I met him when I was young, but he was over 80. And I asked him, he was a very wise man, and I asked him, what was the secret of life? And he looked at me and he said, Idanna, one always has to place yourself where luck can strike. And my uncle Emilio was like that. He spontaneously went through life in such a positive manner, and the book, the 3/4 of the book shows the trials. I think you say trial of fire. The trials that he went through during the war, it's like two lives. He risked his life to smuggle into Switzerland the diaries of the foreign minister of Mussolini, Mr. Ciano, Galeazzo Ciano. They're called the Ciano diaries. And these diaries to give in the hands of the Allies. And this was 1944. Mussolini had fallen and Italy had been occupied by the Nazis, by the Germans. And so he said these diaries are so important, and they were important. The New York Times defined them as the most important documents of World War II.
Oh my goodness.
He wasn't really totally aware. He hadn't, the New York Times hadn't, he hadn't, the New York Times hadn't written about these diaries yet. And, but he sensed that the Allies had to have them. And so he smuggled them into Switzerland because in Bern was a man called Alan Dulles, who was the head of the OSS, which was the precursor of the CIA. And he was the head for Europe, and it was based in Bern, in Switzerland. So he risked his life. He was then taken by the Nazis, by the Gestapo, and tortured. I mean, nobody imagines Emilio Pucci with all the, glamour and all that he went, he was arrested, confined into a dungeon, and there he was tortured for days. And then, they wanted to know where the diaries were in Switzerland. And he says, and so anyway, it's a story around these allies getting the diaries. Mussolini wanted them, Hitler wanted them, and the Allies, of course, wanted them. But later I'm going to say why, and what happened. But you see, the fact is that after the war, nobody talked about the war. Nobody, whether it was a simple farmer's family, whoever had survived, or a higher class, nobody talked about the war. The whole impetus of Italy was to look into the future ahead. And the energy that people had to be ahead. Nobody wanted to go into negative things. So I knew very little about this. And I never really questioned my father. And this is something that happens to every one of us. Once the elders pass away, you realize how little you asked about this and that, because of course, as life goes on and you become a little bit wiser, hopefully, you realize more things about the past and the history. And then you say, oh God, I wish I had asked my father this, or I wished I had asked my uncle this, more. And instead, it happens to all of us, actually. So it was all a surprise. And the way it started, this book, well, I happened to have, I've written a few books, and they were all about ancestors of mine. And it's not because I'm obsessed with ancestors. I'm not at all. It's just that suddenly I discover an incredible story about a member of either from my mother's side or from my father's side. And then I start researching, and I said, oh my God, So the thing is that when you are doing something on an ancestor, if the story is really strong, then you forget that you are related, and you start objectively researching about the person. And there is no blood relation. That's when you know that the story is really worth it, that the life of this person is really worth it. So the way this book started, again, it was completely by chance. It's because my aunt, the widow of Emilio, was approached by somebody to do a documentary on my uncle and about his life. And she was very happy about it, but she wasn't sure about this war period. Because she was 20 when she married him. He was 45, and she married him in 1959. So it was well after, the war had ended. And so she didn't know much. Perhaps, the same as we all knew. Perhaps a little bit more, but I doubt it. And so she was a bit worried about this part, because, of course, it was during the 20 years of Mussolini, of fascism. And I said to her, I said, don't worry. I said, Terry and I are going to do the research for this. So you can trust us that we are going to do it. We're not going to take advantage. We're going to find the truth about this period. And so we started. And then the documentary never materialized, like happens with many
exactly.
And but we had started, and it was so interesting. We had already decided with Terry that to do a research is better to be in two than one, especially on something like that. And Terence, my husband, is very much of a historian. He loves history and he knows how to research it. So, but then something happened. I went into the New York Public Library and I found a little book that was self-published. And it was about the Chano Diaries, about this journalist from the Chicago Tribune who had come across the Chano Diaries and was kind of analyzing them. And it was an interesting book. I have it. And what happened is, you go in the bibliography, and suddenly in the bibliography there are two lines. Report by Marchese. They put my uncle's title, Marchese Emilio Pucci, in his role with the Chano Diaries. And that intrigued me so much. And it was a secret report for the OSS, written by him for the OSS. And so I said, the National Archives, US National Archives, a labyrinth and a world of its own. And I called and researched and wrote, and I couldn't find them. They said, yes, we should have them, but we can't find them. And it was a saga that lasted a few months. We even went to Princeton, to Alan Dulles' archive. We went, and I hired professional researchers.
You would have to. Yeah, you would have to. Go ahead.
Nothing, And then one day it was, a huge, incredibly hot summer. And I was saying, well, we have to find this. And suddenly I said, the OSS archives may be incorporated in the CIA archives.
Oh.
And Terence said, you are right. So we went into the CIA archive.
Wow.
At that moment, all online, and we found these, they were talking about 534 boxes, and each box had documents. Nothing was in chronological, alphabetical order, chronological, nothing. But
Wow.
we had the title of each document. And so with two computers, Terry on one side and on, we started to go through every title. They were written very small, every had, and we were there 2-3 days. On the fourth day, we see it. We see it,
Oh.
This is like, again, serendipity. And so that's the story of how we got a digitalized copy, and how that's a story it's on, but we managed. And once I started reading it, and this was during COVID, I started reading it. It was in his voice, he in the first person, you see, about 70 pages. Typewritten with the old typewriters. And, it was so overwhelming because there were all these details. And it was also, like a John le Carré espionage novel. And at that point, we said, but this is a book.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the book is that it's his voice throughout. So it's his words, and we are just bridging various moments, one moment to the other. And also we are writing about the context, because all the time, when you read something like that, you have to know what was happening in the world. You have to know,
right.
You have to know what surrounded this. And so that you can enter the mind of a person, or what he was going through, because he was interned in Switzerland for 2 years. It's how he got out of the Gestapo jail, how he got to Switzerland. He was 2.5 months in a hospital because he was so injured by the torture, And yet, this is a man, and that's what I would like young people to get out of the book, and also older people. This is a man who was always positive, and he was always never victimizing himself, never. He was always looking ahead, and that's why he attracted luck. That's why he attracted inspiration in his work. This comes out, from the book. So that's my answer. It's a long answer.
It's a beautiful answer. And it's so, as you were describing it, because I introduced you initially, of course, as a storyteller. You're an incredible storyteller because I'm able to visualize everything you're talking about. I'm visualizing your uncle and what he had done. And I ask you briefly, how did he manage to get a hold of this information and smuggle it over? I mean, how did he do this? It is such a dangerous operation that he did, yet he did it. Yet he felt compelled to do it because it was the right thing he felt to do, right?
Yes. Well, but this about how he smuggled over, it's all in the book.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a complicated thing to explain in a few words. And I think that it's actually fascinating to read because it's in his words, and I cannot transmit his words.
Well, it's also very timeless. You said it's a wonderful story for young people to know. It's a wonderful story for old people to know. It's a part of history, but it's also a story, pardon me, that doesn't go away. The time period is almost timeless, right?
Yes, because also we see things repeating itself, themselves, History repeats itself. We just don't learn. We just don't learn. And so what we are living now in the world is, I think this book is, this is what they tell me. It's like forewarning, It's a cautionary tale. And because we are living so many details. I was traveling through America in March, promoting the book, and people were so interested from everywhere. We always had about minimum 100 people, minimum 100 people. We had 200-300, and all the questions were so pertinent, because somehow, even if you don't express it, even if we live this day by day, we go one day and another, we feel that something strange is happening around, that is changing the face of America also, is changing the opinion of Europeans towards America,
Right.
And is, we feel it here because we have so many Americans that are wanting to settle in Tuscany now, wanting also, there is this wish to have a Schengen visa so they can be in Europe more, whoever can, even people who want to start a business. It's like if no one is really comfortable completely in his own, because everything is changing. And so when Emilio was growing up, can you imagine when he was growing up, when he was 9 years old, it was when Mussolini organized this famous march on Rome, to Rome.
Right. That's right.
With all his people, And then he became prime minister because the king was so terrified of Bolshevism that he said, he made him prime minister, and it was a way to try and ward off Bolshevism. He probably didn't realize that it was as bad, fascism and Bolshevism were brothers in a way, So that year, which was 1922, there are a few people who believe it was the beginning of the 20th century, actually, because three empires had died, had vanished. One was the Austro-Hungarian, the Russian, and the Ottoman, practically overnight. Then it was the year that James Joyce published Ulysses.
Mm-hmm. Love him.
It
Such
was
a
the
fan.
year that Freud published his first treatise about the pleasures.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was also the beginning of the Irish state and the beginning of the Soviet Union, when Vladimir Lenin declared the Soviet Union. The Wasteland was published that year.
Right. I have to say, of course, we're able to look back at this history because so much time has passed and we're able to study it and understand. And we're going through something similar in a way, but we're living in it, right? In real time. And as people look back on what's happening today, it will be very similar to when people look back then. I mean, in a different way, but you know what I mean. To your
Yes.
point of how important it is to study history, to understand history, how history does repeat itself, because often as humans, we don't learn our lessons. We simply repeat. So I thought that was very well said, because I've always taught my children that, because I was a student of art history and literature, and I would tell my own children, study what happened thousands of years ago. And the story might be different, but the human behavior is always very much the same. And to your point, that very often someone passes before we realize, oh my goodness, I had so many questions. I often say to my children, do you have anything? My kids are in their 20s, right? So as you can imagine, they're young, they're often doing their thing. I'm like, do you have any questions if you ever want it? No, not now. And I'm like, look, there'll come a day where you wish you asked me, because
Yes.
I know that happened with my own parents, right? And I made a point as a journalist to ask them as much as I could when they were alive, just because that's what I do, right? But still, there's so many questions I have. So again, to your point, if you have a question or you think you might, do it now, young people, because there comes a day you can't do it. It's very, very important. I want to ask you about your uncle. How did he make you feel? And I know that you came to America and worked for his shop in at Saks Fifth Avenue, which I found to be so fascinating. You were very young when you came here. And also, let's get a little bit into his designs when he first initially was designing. I know it's in the book, but I want to tease people anyway, because it is fascinating. And so how he did that and parlayed it into one of the most extraordinary careers in fashion, if you would.
Well, I have to thank him because he gave me a job that took me away from Tuscany, away from this town. It's a town where very few live, very few people live, because people come here. It's like the navel of the world, they come here. And the Florentines, they have, the whole world coming here, and they used to also before this sort of easy travel, there were so many expatriates living here. They were all poets or painters, or anyway, the Florentines have been spoiled in that. And in a way, it's very strange. They can be very provincial. And because they've been spoiled by the beauty of the city, by the history. And so anyway, I had this incredible chance of leaving. And I was young, and I was really thrilled. First of all, I spent 2 years in Cambridge. I wanted so much to experience a little bit of the world that I went to Cambridge to take a proficiency in English so I could teach in schools of the Commonwealth. And my idea was to go to Fiji to teach English there in school, because it was part of the Commonwealth. And then my uncle said, no, Fiji, no, Fiji. You are going to New York, and you're going to work at Saks Fifth Avenue as a salesperson. And when I said, fantastic, I was thrilled. I had to go through particular course, a teaching to learn, where they teach you how to learn how to sell, how to be a salesperson. And I remember very well going every night to this training. And at the end of it, I said to myself, if I follow what they tell me, I'm not going to sell a single thing with my personality. First of all, they always tell you to approach a client. I'm always against approaching a client.
Me too. I understand. Oh, absolutely. You don't want
Yeah.
to have to tell them they need to buy this or that. I understand. I did this once and I thought, oh, I can't. I can't. So I fully understand that. Oh, my goodness.
No, because you observe a client from the distance and you know intuitively when they need help, you know. But I was supposed to dress in black. That was a condition, and I was not supposed to say who I was.
Well,
Because there were salespeople there who were older, who had been there quite a while at Saks. And if I suddenly said who I was, or they said who I was, probably the clients would want to meet me, come to
right.
me, and it was incredibly unfair. So I accepted that. But they still were, I remember they were very, not very nice to me at the beginning because they were challenged by the fact of who I was. And yes, because I had no commission. They had. The condition was no commission, no nothing, and dressed in black. Yes.
Just sell.
Just sell, you know. So, and I remember they thought I had a commission, you see, I was 19 and they were all, you know, in their 30s, their 40s. And anyway, so until one day, I just tell this story because it's very funny. One day, it was raining and a young woman comes in and she had a raincoat, like a trench coat, with hem unsewn, so it was half down. She had a green bonnet and a bright green bonnet, and she was very pregnant, about at least, I don't know, 8 months or 7 months pregnant.
Oh, my.
And she went through all the clothes and she looked and she stopped, and it was really raining. She was, I said, who's coming to buy these clothes under the rain? It was cold outside. But anyway, a lot of people bought them to go to Florida, you know. And so, and I said, and she's pregnant. She can't wear them, you know. And so that's when I went near her. And I just asked when she expected the baby to be born. I said, and then I said, she told me that she liked this dress and she didn't need to try it on. And she pointed at various clothes. And I said, but you can't buy them. You don't know how you will be afterwards. I hope you'll be, you know, and you can't return them. Especially, I remember one dress was $12,000 at the time.
Wow.
Yes, because it was all beaded. It was all embroidered with these. It was an evening gown, but really fantastic. And
wow.
And she said, no, they will all fit me. And then she said, no, I want to buy them. So I took the books of every salesperson there. Nobody had approached her. Nobody would waste any time in approaching her. And I put the sale on each book, every book. And when she left, she said, my chauffeur will pick up everything this afternoon. And off she went. And the chauffeur came in uniform, you know.
Right.
Picked up these boxes, and off she went. And she was the wife, I remember the name of, it was Moser, and it was all the big safes of the bank safes in America, the vaults, the
The
bank,
balls. Yeah, yeah. Wow.
And so these salespeople afterwards, I mean, they thanked me so much and they changed completely attitude towards me. That was like,
Wow.
after that, it was a real paradise when I went to work, And
Absolutely. And plus, you were the young one there, too.
yes,
You were so much younger. They're probably thinking, oh, my goodness, this girl gets this great sale. And then, look, you were kind enough, of course, to divide all that. You weren't on commission anyway.
no,
So
no,
this was
no.
something that was really beautiful to do. And yes, you gained lots and lots of friends that day. That was very
Oh,
important.
yes, very.
Let me
But
ask you a few.
also, you
Go ahead.
see, I suddenly realized after 2 years, I realized that fashion was changing.
Oh.
It was going to be, I really sensed it was going to become a huge corporate, multinational affair.
Mm.
The licenses, all the how you say, when they're, you sell the license to have a shop somewhere, you sell and um, I just said, this is not my world, you see. This was not my,
Mm.
and I left.
How wonderful, though. Just a few more questions, if you don't mind, because your storytelling is just so magnificent. I hope that people are running out and purchasing the book now, because you really just have such a way with describing all the different scenarios that you've been involved in, or of course your uncle Emilio was involved in. It's really magnificent. He had quite a flair for color, which was magnificent with his work. But he initially started with his fashions while he actually was in the war. Is that correct?
No, 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 no,
No.
no.
But didn't
He
he like design uniforms and whatnot a little just to get a little taste? No?
No, first of all, he didn't know that he was designing. He
Yeah.
was conscious of it. He happened through all sorts of incredible stories and scholarship and all that. He ended up in Reed College in America.
That's it. Yeah.
And because he had absolutely no money, because while he was in America, Italy invaded Ethiopia. And so sanctions, like today, there are sanctions, were put in Italy, and his scholarship was discontinued. So he found himself with absolutely no money, and he had had a scholarship for agrarian studies at the University of Georgia. So he was first in Georgia, then money ran out, and he had to quit that college. And then he said, well, I'm not going to go back to Italy. He had a ticket on a boat to go
Right.
back, and he sold the ticket, and he gravitated towards Portland. He crossed America and said, I'm here, I'm going to see America. I want to see. And so he presented himself. He saw this mountain, Mount Hood, full of snow. He was actually when he left Italy, he had to take a big decision because he was training as a skier for the Olympic team, the Italian Olympic team. And then he gets the scholarship. And so he was in a turning point of his life. He said, shall I continue here and then ski for the Olympics, or I go to America? And he decided to go to America. But he was a fantastic skier. And so he arrived in Portland, he saw this mountain full of snow. And then he realized there was a college there. And they told him it's Reed College. So he presented himself. He went and he asked to talk to the dean. And they said yes. And he presented himself to the dean. And there is this incredible description by the dean of that time in a letter about seeing this young Italian, kind of fairly well dressed, but obviously he had been sleeping in haystacks. He was really sort of all, with this old kind of consumed suit and jacket. And Emilio said, look, I am a really good skier, and I realize that the Reed does not have a ski team. If you give me free tuition, I'm going to form the ski team of Reed College. And so it's all described in the book,
It's wonderful. It's magnificent.
And so he designed, because in America at that time, people were skiing in dungarees, and he said, no, they have to look good when they ski. And so he just made these skiing uniforms that were made in Portland by a company. But, he did it not as a designer, you see.
But certainly that opened up so much for him, right? Like, how did he become from this team to who he became? I mean, because, there was quite the evolution. Go ahead.
Yes, that was in 1935, you see.
Yeah.
1935. So he made this uniform, but, as you and I would make something, and never thinking that he was a designer, or one day he would be a fashion designer. No, absolutely not. And then after 35, he came back in 37. After having his degree, he came back, and then the war started and the whole thing started. So, from Reed College 35 to actually when he did his first thing, were 12 years difference, you see. So
watching the evolution of him becoming, and I know you weren't born at that time, but the evolution of him becoming Emilio Pucci that we all know, right? That we all recognize, that we all love. What was that like for you, learning from him, watching his talent? What did you learn from him?
Well, when there is a part of the book, when the story of Emilio is actually finished, that whole Jean Le Carré, Astonishing Odyssey, then there is a part that I wrote myself, which is called Fleeting Memories of My Uncle. And these are short stories about me growing up, and in front with this constant spectacle that was happening, and learning what twice a year. I was 9 years old, and twice a year these incredible models would come to the house, and I was they would go up on top. There was a loggia, and that's where the photographers came, and there were all the photography on the roofs, this place where I grew up is under the cathedral, under the big cupola of the Duomo, and the setting, the view is just fantastic.
Wow.
And so the setting, it was an incredible backdrop, and there were all these beautiful girls. And I was 9 years old. I was, at that age, actually, I could have grown up with a terrible chip on my shoulders physically, because I was completely, I was saying, God, I saw such beauties, and but I didn't think that that was really my life. You see,
Oh.
I looked at it as I had the privilege of having a front row to a spectacle,
Hmm.
but I didn't take it as personally at all, you know. And I knew there was enormous imagination behind it, incredible fantasy, because to come up with those designs and those colors. And then something that fascinated me was the fact that he was always inspired by different cultures in the world. You know, it wasn't just the shape of something. He did in Italy, he did a Florentine collection, a Sicilian collection, a Siena collection of this town not far from Florence. That's a whole trip, this town, you know. Then he went to Peru, um,
Wow.
Africa, and then one nation, that one culture that really inspired him a lot was Indonesia, the Bali and
Hmm.
Java, you know. And anyway, so that is more, you know, that is really inspiring when you have this imagination that expands in different worlds, absorbs from different cultures, and then, of course, he worshipped artisans. Now in the world, the artisan is a breed in extinction, is a human breed in extinction. But there they had been totally damaged in the war. Like when COVID came,
Yeah.
artisans lost so much, you know. When the flood of Florence, 1966, there were so many artisans that had lost all their tools. And that's when Emilio went around America to raise money for the artisans. And, you know, so they could go back to work. So actually, his fashion began in Made in Italy. He was part of the Made in Italy. And the Made in
Yeah.
Italy had to do with the artisans' work, whether it was in leather, in silk, in weaving, in actually seamstresses. Everybody had a role. Everybody in each accessories had a role in his success.
Yeah, absolutely. And clearly, you are an offshoot of him. Imagine being that little girl and watching those beautiful models and watching your uncle and family at work. It is no wonder that you grew up to be the storyteller that you are, because there's so much wonder. There's so much wonder.
Yeah.
And, you know, you needed to then tell other people, to make films about it, to write books about it. In fact, this is your fifth book. But you've done a lot of work also with your husband, quite a talented person himself.
Yes.
You there's a film that you did. We don't have too much time, so I just want to mention them. Black Africa, White Marble that you did with your husband Terence in 2012. Oh, magnificent! Archaeology of a Woman, fantastic. Then there's a documentary, Talk Radio Tehran.
Yeah.
You've done so much. You know, I think what did you do? It's called the what's the name of the book? I'm trying to think. The
And
epic.
the Lady of Sing Sing.
That's it. That's it. The Lady
Lady
of
of
Sing
Sing
Sing.
Sing.
Yeah.
Yes, but
Oh,
all the
brilliant.
all the things I write, you know, and I search. My husband too is nonfiction, and we
Yeah.
try to be as truthful as possible. And everything, like in this book, has the sources. The sources. Nothing is invented. You know, this is a big challenge, and of course, nowadays there is AI and Google and all that, but we don't trust it, actually. We don't trust.
You know, my absolutely. And it obviously there's going to be a place for it, whether we like it or not, because it just will. But it could never really take the place of the research, because I love research. You know, I interview authors quite a bit. I read the books from front to cover. I love the research. I could feel the research in your work. And you'll never really be able to replicate that, no matter how much they try to sell us on it. We can't. I hope these things don't get lost in our future. They may. I don't know. I can't predict the future, but you also mentioned artisans. So much has changed in a very short amount of time. And I wonder what will be in 100 years from now. Will we still be creating and writing the way we have? I don't know. I know. I don't want to say no, because I want to be positive, as you are, right? You like to bring stories that can lift up. So I don't know. What do you think?
But we have to, we are mutants, you say. There's something that, because also once upon a time, when the radio came, the telephone, we decided, okay, I want the radio or not. We decided whether we would want a telephone or not. We were aware. We have fallen. All the world has fallen into this technology. Nobody asked us anything. We're just, and it's changing the mind, it's changing something, in our mind, and we don't even know it, And so we are in a moment that is incredibly interesting, but it's also very dangerous for the human mind,
Well, let me address that, because I write about that and talk about that quite a bit with my husband, who's also in the media business, with my 3 children, because they're born in the early 2000s and the late 1990s. They didn't even grow up with it. Okay, they're in their 20s. So my point is, it's happening so fast that you're right. Look what it's doing to the mind, certainly to my mind. And I have to really force myself to slow down, back up, and do what's comfortable for me. So I hope this evolution will find its place, that people use it in a way that makes sense. At least with the telephone, and then the automobile, the television, it came on, a little slower. Or as my mother likes to say, the Iceman. She always talks about the Iceman that would come, flip-flopping down the street, and he would bring you a block of ice to keep your meat cold. And then, of course, came the freezer, which she said was marvelous, because at least it came upon slowly. This is just racing through our lives. And I personally, I'm with you. I can't quite keep up. And my children can't. So it's not like it's me, because I'm over a certain age. They feel like that too. And they're in their 20s. I can only imagine, if you're born today, you will not have known any better, is what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah. And also the difficulty is it's very useful. We have to use it, not be used. You see, not be used. So
I love that.
This is where it's difficult, is to not be used.
Yeah.
And so anyway, there's so much to say, but we are living in the most interesting period. So interesting, because we are between worlds, we are already in a world, but we were born without it. So we are.
Absolutely. But just like your Uncle Emilio, and he found a way to transition over, which is why this is an important book to read. It's fascinating, really, is what it is. It's like a mystery. Each page you turn, it's beautifully written. I want to just remind my audience again, Emilio Pucci, The Astonishing Odyssey of a Fashion Icon. We know him as the fashion icon, but you introduce us, as you like to say, to so much of his early life, the dark period, and then this lifts into a very colorful period. And you managed to merge the two quite beautifully, you and your husband. I want to give Terence all the credit that he deserves.
My husband is, the one question is, everybody asks, how does a couple write together? How do people write together? And because this book was written together, but he is a marvelous writer in the Irish tradition. He's Irish and Irish American, but the Irish is very powerful. And so the point is that you shouldn't have any ego. Ego goes. And you should always try to do the best for the end, and it doesn't matter who has the idea or who has, you have to blend in.
Because the book is not about Idanna and the book is not about Terence. This book is about Emilio and the history, the fascinating history that we want to know about. And that's the only way you could do it. And that's why it worked, the two of you, your collaboration.
And it's a history which he tells himself,
Yeah. And by the way, he's in the background. He helped us set up the shot. So hello to Terence. If you want to poke your head in and our audience can say hi to you because he's quite darling. He's quite darling. And I really appreciated him. There you are, Terence.
No, bellissima.
Bellissima. And thank you so much for helping with this and for all you've done for your film work, both of you together. It's beautiful. You're a wonderful collaboration and a wonderful couple. And I'm really quite honored that you gave me this moment to share with my audience here. We have a large Italian-American community here in Los Angeles and New York, and people really, really wanted to hear your story. I'm glad we were able to make this work. I enjoyed the book so much. Please tell people how they can pick it up, obviously. I like to go to a small bookstore. If people can go.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why
and
not
they can
small bookstores?
Right, and they can order the book, right? If they don't have it,
order the book
from Barnes and Nobles and Amazon and all that. But also, if it's a large Italo-American, they should read The Lady of Sing Sing.
Yeah,
they should read how.
I didn't.
Yeah,
go. I didn't read it, and I'm now you've inspired me to read that book, and I'm excited about it. And I'm going to tell you when I read it. I'm going to put it on my summer list. I have a lot of travel, and I absolutely will read it because this book really...
Because it's all about Italo-American.
Yes, and the whole Italo-American experience in New York, end of the century, all the migrations, how they're treated.
Yes.
It's an amazing story. But I just wanted to tell your Italo-American fans one thing. I'm wearing green. Both of you are wearing red, and you also are wearing white. So we're wearing the Italian colors without even thinking about it.
Absolutely. Well, all of my, of course, as it should be. All of my family is, all of them are from east of Naples. I'm born here. And do not speak well. And I am trying. I've tried for 30 years, but I'm not giving up. And here's my next step. I'm doing an immersion class.
Oh, good.
In Italy, because it's the only way I'm going to be able to do it. It's the only way. It's the only way. So I just want you to know. And yes, we are in red, white, and green as it should be. So thank you. Thank you.
You let us know when you're coming. You're always welcome on the Army.
I'll take you up on that.
It's just here.
Oh, that's very exciting. I appreciate that. And I'm coming in September. I'll let you know. Perhaps we can have a cafe or something. I would enjoy that so much. Oh, my goodness. And I'll make sure to read Sing Sing before I come, too. So we have something to talk about. That would be wonderful.
You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised.
Oh, now you've got me going. Okay. I'm so thrilled. I'm just thrilled.
Simon
Lady of Sing Sing, Simon and Schuster. People, so other than picking up this latest book, also pick up Lady of Sing Sing. You've got me going. Maybe we'll have you back to talk about that. Would you come back?
Yes. Very happily.
Oh, really? Oh, good. Now that we figured this out, the time difference and all that stuff, it'll be easy. So thank you so much. Oh,
bye, Deborah.
Bye. Lots of love. But let me tell everybody, make sure they pick up the book, and you can find our conversation on YouTube. We'll also post it on Facebook, also some clips on Instagram, and they can also listen as an audio podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio. Just put in my name, Deborah Cobelt Live, or the Little Italy podcast, and you'll find my conversation with Idanna and now Terence talking about their book. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please tell your friends, pick up the book. Bye-bye. Ciao.